Now, as long as I've been involved in the sport of weightlifting, I've always had problems dealing with this topic of gaining body weight. And in this particular country, especially in the second half of the 20th century and going into the 21st century, people are just hesitant to want to gain weight because they've been told that if you weigh more than a certain amount, then you're unhealthy or unattractive. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to be the best weightlifter, which you can be, and that's an ongoing topic for me, you need to do so at the most appropriate body weight. Most of us are not going to be national champions, world champions, or Olympians, but each of us can strive to be the best weightlifter that we can be. I think the first thing to clear up is that weightlifting is a sport and it's not a part of health and fitness. I think a lot of people are really confused. A sport is an activity in which you attempt to achieve certain goals, whereas fitness is not so clearly defined at all. For some people, it's losing weight. For some people, it's about gaining stamina. For some people, it's about improving mobility. And for some people, it's losing body fat. There are a variety of ways in which fitness can be defined, but I think you need to look at the fact that if you look at any elite weightlifter, they don't have the body they started out with. So in very, very rare instances, if you're going to get to be the best weightlifter that you can be, you're going to have to gain some muscle because the only one of your tissues that's going to help you lift more weight is muscle, as directed by your nerves. You can't do it with fat, you can't do it with skin, you can't do it with hair. You need to gain muscle. If you're going to lift more weight, and muscle is fairly dense, it's significantly more dense than body fat. And this is why a lot of weightlifters can't float. And you just need to get over the criticism that people are going to give you. You begin to gain weight, but you have to decide what's important in your life. If this sport is important to you, then you need to think about gaining some muscular body weight. I might also mention that if you're a member of a weightlifting team and everyone is on the same page as far as body weight is concerned, it's a lot easier to develop the proper mindset. We're not talking about turning you into a big fat slob. We're talking about having you gain muscular body mass, that functions in an athletic way. So let's talk about body weight and weightlifting. And let's look at it from a practical standpoint, the clean and jerk versus the snatch. First of all, the clean and jerk is the lift that wins meets. And ideally, if your training is proper and your body proportions are optimal, the clean and jerk is going to be ideally 125% of your snatch. And so if you look at elite level competitions and you look at the victory stand, the clean and jerk gold medalist is frequently the shortest competitor because the shortest competitor is going to be the one that can generate the most power. So let's talk about body weight and height. And in order to do that, we need to understand the lever systems in the body and the third class levers because there are more third class levers in your extremities than any other type of lever. So let's talk about these different types of levers. This first one is called a first class lever, and it's called that because of the order of the components. So if we have load, fulcrum, force, that's a first class lever. We have one of those in your body. It's right here. If this is your neck and this is your skull, the weight of your skull is going to be the load, and then the muscle that's moving it, which is called the splenius capitis, is the one that goes up the back of your neck to the base of your skull. And if you've been in a very boring lecture and you start to fall asleep and your head starts to drop down, you get a stretch shortening reflex and the splenius capitis contracts and suddenly your head pulls up. So that's a first class lever being used at that point. Second class lever, you've got one of those in your body. The second class lever, you have one of these on your body, the fulcrum, the load, and the force. So that's a different order. And you have one of these at your heel. The Achilles tendon is attached to your calf. the load is your body weight, and the fulcrum is where the ball of your foot is making contact with the floor. Now, most of the joints on your extremities are third class levers, and these are the order is the fulcrum, the force, and then the load. Now, the first two, first and second class levers, these can actually multiply your force depending on the distances between the force and the load and the force and the fulcrum. But on the third class lever, you actually you have to generate a greater force than whatever load you're lifting. And the longer this lever is, the smaller a percentage of your force that you're going to be able to lift. Okay, so if we look at it this way, your elbow right here is the fulcrum. Your bicep here is going to shorten, and that's going to generate the effort or the force, and the load is going to be whatever you have in your hand. So this would be a third class lever, and most of the levers in your extremities are third class levers. Now, I think you can see from this is if this lever arm here from the fulcrum to the load, the longer it is, the more effort you're going to have to generate in order to move it. So if you, let's say you've got 10 kilos of weight here, but if you have a longer arm, you're going to have to generate more effort in order to move that 10 kilos than you'd have to if you have a shorter lever arm. All right, now we need to talk at this point about the reasons for having weight classes. And a lot of people think the weight classes are there to tell you what weight class you should lift in. But weight classes are there in order to provide equal competition opportunities. If we didn't have weight classes, then all weightlifting meets would pretty much go to whoever the heaviest people were, because they would have the most muscle, and they'd also probably be the tallest people too. So bodyweight classes in sport competitions were developed to provide more competitive opportunities for a wider range of competitors. Right now, we've got 8 bodyweight classes for men and 8 bodyweight classes for women. So we have 8 champions in each gender. If we didn't have weight classes, we would only have 1 champion in each gender. At one point, strength-dependent sports were dominated by the largest competitors. So the bodyweight classes were not established to designate the competitive class for an athlete. All right, they were developed in order to provide more competitive opportunities. So bodyweight classes should not be used to inhibit the growth of the organism, which a lot of people do, and that includes well-meaning coaches and parents. All right, so these are the current bodyweight classes that were established this year in 2025, and these are the height ranges of elite level lifters in these classes. And these were taken from a lot of data from the previous classes and kind of extrapolated out. So if you are 60 kilos, ideally, if you're going to be elite level, you're going to be between 147 and 153 centimeters. All right. If you're 65 kilos, you're going to be 153 to 159 centimeters. Okay. So this is for the men, and these are the same table for the women. Okay. And this kind of also tells you, people always think that weightlifters are short. This was one of the old rumors about weightlifting. Why are weightlifters always short? Well, the thing is, they're always short for what they weigh compared to people that don't lift weights. All right, and for those of you that are still in the English system, whatever you weigh, however many inches tall you are, multiply that by 2.54 to get the number of centimeters. And whatever number of pounds that you weigh, multiply that by 0.453 in order to get your weight in kilograms. Now, weightlifting is an international sport, so we use the SI system, the System International, uh, simply because it's a better measurement system. It's on a base 10, just like our numbering system is on a base 10. And the guy that caught on to that and tried to bring it back to America was Benjamin Franklin. He got it from the French, and he actually got whatever version of Congress there was at the time to adopt the metric system or System International as our legal system of measurement, and it has been since the early 1800s. But nobody recognizes it. The only one that tried to actually implement that was Richard Nixon, of all people, but it didn't catch on. So we still do pounds and inches and things like that. All right, so weight loss in physically mature adults versus children and adolescents. This abnormal weight loss that takes place can actually be damaging, more so for children and adolescents than it is for adults. Okay, so world-class adult weightlifters usually maintain a body weight during training that is significantly above their normal non-training body weight. And they do this partially so that they have extra reserves on their bodies to help them recover. And in order to do that, they usually consume 5 or more meals per day, 3 large meals and 2 small meals. And world-class adult weightlifters might only cut body weight 2 or 3 times per year in order to compete in the most significant competitions. Usually it'll be the Continental Championships and the World Championships or the Olympic Games. And most of these athletes, most elite level athletes, have a pretty high metabolic rate. So they burn calories faster. So they need to eat a lot in order to maintain their body weight and in order to recover. And world-class athletes should not be used as a model for children and adolescents in issues of metabolism, unless you're working with children that have a tremendous metabolism. But that's another topic for another time. Now, children and adolescents, we have to realize that they are in a growth phase, and they need to get a lot of calories in their body, and they need to get a lot of protein if they're going to build muscle and other structures that are helpful in the growth process. Periodic starvation and dehydration are going to inhibit the growth process. So the development of children and adolescents should be undertaken with the goal of growing the individual to her or his genetic potential. Now, I know that some people have their kids compete in weightlifting meets several times a year and have them cut body weight in order to get into a certain weightlifting class. I highly discourage this because it's going to inhibit the final development of the child. So regular food and water deprivation of youth should be considered abusive, and there is absolutely no supportive evidence to indicate that cutting body weight is going to enhance performance. And there are some psychological dangers involved also. Making weight could end up being the most significant event in a competition for some athletes who are regularly forced to lose weight. And I see athletes come out of the weigh-in after having tortuously lost weight in order to get into a certain weight class, and they're so relieved at that point that they have a hard time developing the energy for the competition. So they're so psychologically drained after weighing in, they just don't have the energy to put into the competition. And if making weight becomes so dreadful, so torturous, that it diminishes the athlete's enthusiasm for the sport, the athlete may choose to participate in other activities. So short of national events, I've stopped worrying about my youth athletes making weight. Whatever you weigh, go in and lift at that body weight. And I think the most Impressive example that I saw of that was that of Ricky Lujan. Ricky Lujan was a national junior Olympics champion. He set national records in every weight category and age group that he lifted in. And his dad, who was the former Cuban national coach, never had him dry down. At the first National Junior Olympics that was held in Los Angeles in 1972, the body weight class limit for Ricky was 165 and a quarter. And he showed up, he weighed 166. His dad didn't bother having him reduce that 3/4 of a pound to get into the 165 and a quarter. He just let him lift in the 181 and 3/4 pound class, at which Ricky broke all of the national records and won the championship. So that was a turning point in the way that I thought about making weight. So I would advise very strongly that you let kids enjoy the sport and not make a big deal out of making weight. There will come a time when they may have to do that, when they're mature, but their overall development is going to be compromised if they're constantly losing weight. So I want to thank you for listening, and I hope this has been helpful to you. And if you are coaching any adolescents, I hope that it's helpful for them and helps to maintain their enthusiasm for the sport of weightlifting. Take care. Bye-bye.